I'm Helen. I'm a resident on the Doddington and Rolo estate. I live on the Doddington west part of the estate. I've lived here more than 10 years. I've lived in 2 different flats in the estate. I liked the area and I wanted to stay in the area, so I decided not to move and find somewhere else. Because I guess once you find somewhere that works for you, even if it's not perfect, it's just easier than having to start again. This all used to be shops, and this was going to be repurposed into a drug and alcohol rehab unit. We complained. Well, we didn't just complain, we did a petition, which was more than 400 signatures, which the ward councillor presented to the cabinet. We did all sorts of things. And we ended up with the local MP, we ended up with Cressida Dick coming down. It's taken us 2 years to get this to the point where we can actually, well, at least open the door, but there's no formal process in place for us to be able to use it as a community. The Residents Association has no base, so for us this is perfect for us to be able to use it. So if we could use that, that would give us some roots. So we could then actually start to do much more support work for the residents. We could take on their troubles, take on their cases, essentially what a ward councillor would do, but we could go direct. When I first moved to the estate, I'd never lived on an estate before, and I'd never lived in London, so I didn't know what the culture was like. I didn't know. Well, it was very intimidating actually. Big buildings, people, lots of strange people live in this environment. It's called high density living, and they call it that for a reason, because you are literally on top of each other. Actually, once you get settled somewhere like this and you find your comfort zone, it's actually a really safe place to live. And most of the time it's really, really quiet, which is nice. The culture here on the estate, although it can be a bit difficult to get into initially, actually once you start to make friends and you start to see the same people and you say hello a few times, it starts to feel okay. And I think that that's one of the reasons why the young people gather together so much and hang out together, because if you're on your own, I don't think you'd get picked on so much, but if you're on your own, then you're not hanging out with anybody. Okay, so I was incredibly argumentative at school. I always argued with authority, which obviously didn't go down too well. If I feel that injustice is happening, I challenge it. Well, I did go into financial services eventually because I found I was really good at it. And it was easy to figure out what people needed and how to sell solutions to people, or how to not sell to them, how to find ways to solve their problems. And after a while, I got involved in the Residents Association, and there are lots of problems on the estate that need solving. I found, well, that was actually just as rewarding, not in the financial sense, of course, but it was actually made me feel like I was playing a part in the community. The way that residents feel on this estate is mirrored on other estates, where the older demographic, the older people don't want to get on the phones. They want to have a face-to-face meeting because that's what they're comfortable doing. And actually, we should find ways to facilitate that. We've lost a lot by forcing everything online and being able to function only online. As the council were convinced, like every other organisation, that residents would accept going down the technology route. And to be fair, some residents do like using Zoom or Teams to get online and do meetings, but those are typically people who would be happy using that technology in their working lives. So the reality is, for us, with a demographic of people who are quite a lot older, they don't want to get on, an internet connection, or even a connection where they're connected on a phone. If you're used to communicating face to face, why would you feel comfortable suddenly talking to an electronic device? I'd love for the council to actually take residents seriously, more seriously. because at the moment the council is essentially having to follow legislation, which means that they're having to pay more attention to complaints because of the changes with the Housing Ombudsman. And the outcome of that is that although you would think that the laws are making things better for residents, the Social Housing Green Paper, for example, the review of fire safety following Dame Hackett's investigation into the Grenfell disaster, you would think that those things have had an impact and those kinds of issues will never happen again. But actually no, because really the culture within the council hasn't changed enough on the ground to make that have any real effect. I think, generally speaking, the estate is a much better and a much nicer place to live in than it was when I first came here. And despite the fact that we don't always get what we need from the council, or we don't have the right level of communication, we've got a much bigger community voice than we ever had.